Welcome back, everyone. My name is Katrina, and you are listening to Better Day Podcast. I am here again with Leslie. Welcome, Leslie.
Hello, everyone.
And we also have a special guest today. Anthony has decided to join us.
Hello, how y'all doing?
Hi, Anthony. So today's topic, we're going to talk a little bit about grieving. Last week, I just want to recap, we sat down with a good friend of mine, Ori, and we recapped on generational trauma. And last week we talked about generational trauma with different cultures and different races. And this week we're going to talk about a little bit about grieving, how that affects us in our ACEs and affects us even with our generational trauma and affects us individually. So what do you think? What is your definition for grief, Leslie?
Well, I mean, when you're talking about grief and trauma, mm-hmm. I think for people that have experienced trauma, grieving, it makes the trauma even bigger, intensifies that feeling of helplessness. I mentioned before the loss of my grandpa. Really affected me and even changed the trajectory of my future goals, right? It changed completely the path of my life. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, it's been decades and I still feel the absence. Unfortunately, I lost my grandma last year. It's been over a year and it affected me too. But I think the loss of my grandpa when I was a teenager, it was huge.
It was traumatic.
It was very traumatic. And speaking about trauma and grieving, I mean, that can turn into a PTSD.
It can. Mm-hmm. And it affects the ACEs, like we were talking about.
Of course, it has correlation. It is an ACE. It's not within the 10 ACEs, but it is an ACE.
It is.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts of grieving, Anthony? And I'm super happy to have you here because you're always behind the curtains. And I don't know what happened today, but, you know.
Yeah, I usually like to stay behind the scenes, you know, unseen, unheard, you know, that kind of stuff. But yeah, as far as for grieving, I forgot the question. What was the question?
What is grieving to you? What does it mean to you when you think of that?
So when I think of grieving, I think it is a process of healing. I would say like akin to like when you get cut, the pain you feel, and then the process you go through healing. It's like, you know, pain again. You might, you know, hurt again, bleed again, but then you kind of come back stronger, right? So I think that's what, like when I think of grieving, I think about that. And, you know, especially, or like coming to terms with loss.
Coming to terms.
Yeah.
So speaking of coming to terms, I like that you said that because generational trauma for grieving, that's actually a part of that generational trauma when we don't come to terms with it and it's passed on to our children.
Right.
When we're just not processing it.
When you inherit it.
That old saying, they sweep it under the rug. Remember that?
Just don't pick up the rug.
Just don't pick up the rug.
It also, I think, is more traumatic how it happened, how you lost the person. And because you can actually grieve somebody that is not actually dead. And that is even far more painful.
Yeah,
I agree. I think, so for, I can use myself as an example. And I found out in 2016, my dad had cancer. He didn't pass till 2018. So I had a process of about 2 years to come to terms with that. You know, you want to be hopeful, but then you're confronted with the reality that might not be the case, and you prepare yourself mentally for it. I mean, you're never going to be fully prepared for it, but you're at least, you know, kind of, you know, work on that.
Do you expect that to happen?
I have something similar with an animal, which I didn't even think about that till just now. An animal. I have 2 dogs, and one of my dogs, he's got to be 17 years old. I don't know how he's still around, but last year or the year before, he was on his deathbed. I grieved him. I expected him to pass finally, and he's still with us. So now when he gets sick, I'm just like, oh, it's okay. Go lay down. It's okay. I love you. We've already went through this grieving process.
Yeah.
But that's, that's just.
You come to peace with the fact that sooner or later it's going to happen, and it is a natural process.
And I like that you use that phrase, come to peace, because just like you guys were just saying, within relationships too, if I have a partner, some of us don't leave abusive relationships for many years, but you're grieving in that time. So by the time that you can leave, you've come to peace with it.
That's true. Mm-hmm. By the time you overcome all the toxic relationships and trauma, because, sometimes we have to overcome a lot of trauma within relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question for you. So have you ever grieved in a relationship? Have you ever grieved the loss of a person before you decided to break it off with them because you knew they weren't right for you?
Yes.
I have too.
Okay.
That's which from my experience has made the separation easier.
It certainly does. Because like I said it before, you come to peace that, you know what, it's time for you to take care of yourself and to move on.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I like that phrase, come to peace.
Come to peace.
There's other topics that, people don't talk about too that have to do with grieving. And I know that we all have them individually, but even just, miscarriages, that's a grieving process.
Yes,
I think that's a tough one too, because hormone changes and people, they get more hormonal, they get more sensitive, so super sensitive. That's why they say that a woman after even having a kid, they have depression. Right?
That is, and that has to be hard, like the hardest one.
So way back in the day, I had a miscarriage with an ex-fiance, and when we had that miscarriage, and I say we because most people were looking at me and forgot about him. He grieved more than I did.
Wow.
That's interesting.
But isn't that interesting?
It is interesting.
We need to focus more on, we're not, when topics like that come about, you're not the only one involved.
Right.
That is very common though, because if we're talking about mental health, that is completely, and you're laughing, Anthony, but it's a reality. We don't talk enough about mental health, and they don't really come forward to speak up and ask for support and help.
It's a delicate thing, because if you, it's kind of like a catch-22, right? If you are emotionally compromised, then you're not dependable, right? And then if you are too, let's say, cold, then you're terrible. You're a tyrant. So you have to balance the responsibilities that you have with the mental health and the things that matter, and especially putting yourself last, because you have to. Because I'm not sure about everybody else in today's day and age when it comes down to being a man, but it's your role is to protect, provide, and I follow the belief that as a man of your household, you're supposed to be prophet, preacher, priest. So, sometimes you can't afford to be in a emotionally compromised state, I should say, or think about that. And it kind of hit me because recently we had a death in the family, and I was there for everybody else. Mm-hmm. And then it didn't click to me until I was getting ready to go back to work after being out for a few days, because I was just being there for them. And I'm like, what's going on with my eyes? They're sweating. it's like they're sweating. What is this? And I'm like, oh, I didn't process the fact that this affected me as well too, even though I'm not the closest to it, right? So it's that part of it, and then you work your mind through it. So for me, the best thing that works for me personally, 'cause I'm a very logical, analytical person, is kind of rationalizing my mind, like certain things, and try to come to terms with it throughout the whole entire day. I'm thinking about it the whole entire day, even though I'm functioning and going about it. And then I'm using metacognition to assess my own health and well-being, and
So let me ask you a question, since you brought that up. Do you feel that you were brought up that way?
Yes.
So my next question
Yes.
is, do you feel that is part of generational trauma?
So I would say no. And the reason I would say no, a resounding no, is that when I found you would think it would be when you're a kid and you're like, it's almost like when you're being disciplined and you're like, oh, they hate me and da-da-da-da. And then you get out into the world and you realize, oh, this is what you were preparing me for. And so you love me, because if I was not mentally prepared for this level of difficulty, this level of, what do you call it? Hardship, triumph, whatever if you're not mentally prepared for that, then you're going to be where you would have been as a kid, but as an adult. And you wouldn't have had the mental fortitude to go through these bigger issues that are waiting for you when you get out from being a kid. Right. So that's why I would, in my personal opinion, say no.
That's interesting. Yeah, you're right. I would have thought yes. Okay. But I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how it all shaked out. But yeah.
So, I wanted to talk a little bit about grieving and what the process is to that, and making sure we talk about the mental health, and making sure that we give ourselves some time. And then, like you were just saying, you didn't acknowledge or give yourself any time. To process it.
When it comes to the mind, the brain, we have to make the brain exercise, right? Right. And it's well known that the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala is the logical part and the emotional part. I always trying to find to overpower one on the other. So by you trying to exercise your mind and be more logical, so what part of your brain are you utilizing? The emotional or the more logical?
So definitely more logical. Definitely utilize the more logical part of my brain most of the time. And my reasoning for it was, as a kid, and this would be, I guess I wouldn't say generational trauma, but it's just what I noticed by myself. I was able to assess for myself. I was very angry when I was a kid. But when I was able to logic my way through my emotions, I did better. Because, and the crazy part for me, stupid things would happen. So, one adult who really told me the truth as a kid, and it made sense to me. It didn't make sense to me then, but it made sense to me, as I became an adult. He said, the older you get, the less the world is going to make sense. I said, what? That didn't make any sense. It's yeah, but no, the older you get, the less the world's going to make sense. And I'm like, I don't know about that one. But then I realized, when I was younger, stupid things would happen. I'd go to break up a fight and be in the fight. And I'm like, wait, I went to break up a fight, now I'm in the fight, now I'm suspended, and I'm angry. And I'm like, why am I here? It's you got yourself here by not realizing logic. There's a logical process that you can go through to avoid this situation that you didn't process. Because your instinct told you to do something, and it's not honed properly, or you weren't properly, your instincts weren't correct in that sense. So then you're like, okay, if I would have thought about that and the potential outcome, then I could have avoided that situation. I wouldn't have to be angry.
Wow. Even since you were so little, you were taking the TEB approach, which is thoughts, emotions, and behaviors.
Yes.
Thoughts, emotions, behaviors.
Thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And that is the way that sometimes when people are having too much anxiety, right? And even grieving, as you mentioned, you have to analyze your thoughts. Take a pause. Then your thoughts can turn into emotions, right? But they're just thoughts. They're not reality. And then that turns into a behavior.
Right. And another thing, I know we talked earlier about men's mental health. What I also noticed, and I think this was a Facebook or Instagram post I seen somewhere, but they noticed that men work differently when it comes to dealing with their emotions and problems. We don't just walk up to each other and like volunteer whatever we might be going through, but if there's something to work on, then we're more likely to like have a conversation about like what we might be going through, because that's just that's just how our nature is. I know I'm like that for sure. Like if I'm working on something, that can take your mind off of what you're doing and displace that emotional energy. I know I heard one time, and it might be cliche, but like emotion is energy in motion. So you can take it and channel it to do something else with it. In my opinion, one of the most powerful ones, anger, those most destructive ones, is one of the ones that is when you put it to task, is the most productive, and then the least destructive when you put it in the right place. It's just like 1,000,000 volts of electricity can do a lot, right. Power whole city or whatever. But if not put into the right conduit, it will destroy everything.
Right.
So it's kind of like that.
Back when I was grieving from many things, but I remember going through therapy and I learned the 3 C's. Have you heard of that? The 3 C's.
Sounds
Choose,
familiar.
connect, communicate. So you choose what's best for you. You connect with other people and you communicate. And like Leslie, you were saying, I believe it was the first podcast explaining mental health. What do we do as humans? We need to connect.
We're social beings.
We're social beings.
Mm-hmm. And then having the right circle of friends, supported friends that are going to be there for you, one phone call away. Like the lady that you invited at a third podcast, she mentioned clearly, she's like, I called the white girl. And she's the first one that answered. And she was just so grateful and appreciative that no matter what time she needed help, she knew that she could count on you. Mm-hmm. And just knowing that somebody's there for you is super important when you're going through emotional challenges, despair. Having a friend or somebody that knows is going to be there for you, even the person might not necessarily be a professional. Right now, we're not professionals. We're just sharing our experiences. And of course, we recommend the people that are going through challenges to seek for professional advice. But within the experiences that we're sharing, that might help other people. Yeah, and they can relate.
And to get you to understand that you're not alone in feeling, I felt that too.
That's
and
right.
Maybe that might work for me, and that as well. But in what you were saying when it comes to seeking out other people, I remember some people from when my father passed, some people from my church came to visit.
Oh.
Now the thing is what I wanted to say. It's everybody. People may be different, but I cannot tell you how much I despise the words "sorry for your loss." My condolences. What is another one? I think those are the main 2 offenders that you hear everywhere you go, and then it's almost like it's a trigger. It becomes a trigger because now you're like, first you might be processing like, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, my dad died, right? So then you remember that. But again, coaching out to people, there was a lady that came from my church. And this was important of connecting with people, right? I would see her and she would smile. It's like give me a motherly smile, right? And it was her and my cousin. These are the only 2. And I say everybody else wish their condolences, and I appreciate that. I'm not saying anything bad. I'm just saying sometimes it's a different approach that you could take. But she just looked at me, connected, smiled, and just hugged me. And that was just the most I don't know. That was just the most out of that whole time, that was one of the best things I felt. Her, my cousin came. They didn't say anything. They didn't try to, it's good. Give me a whole pep talk and all that stuff. They just literally just said, hey, you're gonna be all right. and then just keep trucking, or don't say nothing, and then they just hug. She hugged me.
That is beautiful.
You know, yeah. It depends with certain people. Some people are like, hey, don't touch me, but
and that's what you needed at the time.
Yeah, that was what I needed.
I honestly, when I know somebody that somebody that passed, I don't even know what to say. I say, I'm speechless. I am sorry because I'm truly sorry, but I don't know what else to say. I am a hugger, but in this society nowadays, it's hard to hug people.
It is.
Unless you know them, unless you're welcome. I don't know. It's just challenging.
Yeah, I usually ask for permission.
I don't.
At this point.
I have to, I'm like, okay, test the water, see how it's going to go, and maybe I'll hug somebody.
And now don't just go up hugging random people.
No, but I am, it's in my blood. I think I'm super affectionate with people, but I have to, refrain myself from doing a lot unless there's a comfort zone between that person.
Right, unless there's a rapport. Mm-hmm. I definitely agree.
So let's talk about some of the positive. Grieving is let's face it, it's a very negative feeling. So how Anthony, with that experience that you just went through, correct?
Well, that was a while ago.
Well,
recently there was another experience, but this is more removed. This is my fiance, but yeah.
So how and what type of things have you been doing or have done to, in a positive way, to release that grief?
Well, for me, it's getting busy. The best thing in my mind, the logical thing was if the most important thing that you can do to defeat death is legacy. Legacy defeats death. So that would be, it definitely made me more intentional about what I was doing. Where my career definitely made me more intentional about family, and finding a wife, right. which I did. I'm engaged and getting married this month.
Hey,
yeah. It made me more intentional about that, and then learning from the mistakes. Right. So the most important thing is to take the experience that I had from my father, and then build on that, no matter what it was. It wasn't all roses and white picket fences and sunshine. There's some stuff there, but it's to build on that for the next generation and improve upon that. So what I went through, what he went through, they won't have to go through. And so, when you have that kind of mindset, okay, we moving forward, it's not to be cold or callous, but it's and it's something, biblical is let the dead bury the dead. It's hey, well, not to be insensitive, but that person passed, but you're still here. So what are you going to do to keep things going that makes the fact that they came and gone mean something?
I've either heard that before or read it somewhere, that when you're grieving, one of your first reactions to it is reevaluating your life. Yes. Reevaluating where you're at.
Yes, that could be even. I do photography and video, and I at one point hated. People would call me to do photography for funerals, and I hated it. Oh, wow. Because I take joy in what I do, and there's no joy in that. You don't take joy in putting a camera in someone's face and snapping pictures when everyone's crying. But it's you don't know. It's very awkward for me. I mean, I've done it for certain people, real close friends and so on and so forth, but as they wanted and been professional about it. But it's if you ask my opinion, it's really ugh. But and I forgot where I was going with that, but your question.
Yeah, I was saying that sometimes the first reaction is to reevaluate your life.
So yes, okay. So in every time you go to a funeral, that's why I didn't like, because it makes me reevaluate my life, and I'm and you're kind of looking at this person, and you're I don't even really know them like that, but then you're dang, what am I doing with my life? And it's and then there's how they passed, and you're oh man, then you're that could be me, and it's what am I doing? What can I get out of life now that, because you don't know when that time is. None of us know. And so it makes you want to kind of just, it puts, to me, it lights a fire in my ass to do more stuff.
How are you going to be remembered?
How are you going to be remembered, and what effect, like, how are you going to leave the world in a better place than you found it? That's one of the things that I have. Like, why is the world better for you having had been here than you not being here? Is one of those things that I worry about.
That is a reality.
Yeah.
Because that's going to happen to all of us. And sometimes when I have meetings with other organizations or even community officials, they ask me why you're so passionate about what you do with a nonprofit, because they know that we're all volunteers. We don't get salary. I said, we're all temporary, you know. It's about a legacy. What are you leaving behind when you're no longer in this world?
Right.
If you can change somebody's life for the better, if you can influence somebody's life to get better, and you can plant a little seed that is gonna, bloom later on, that is the satisfaction, that you can leave this world as a better place and make this world a better place for better tomorrows, for a better day when you're no longer here.
Do you think there's a difference between grief and mourning? Good question.
Just Google it.
I pulled my phone out right away.
AI.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
So what we know is that grief is what we feel, right? What we think, what we feel on the inside. So we know that grief is on the inside. So while you're Googling that, I'm just thinking my process here. Mourning is an action, right? So if we're mourning something.
So I'm reading from
so it has to be
Google Gemini.
Outward.
According to Google Gemini, grief is an internal emotional response to loss, while mourning is an external expression of that grief. Okay. So
you can be grieving in silence, and you can be.
You see that
crying.
That's So they can be separated emotionally. They can be like exclusive. So, I'm imagining some people look like they're mourning and they're not, but having grief and not showing it is one of those. I think is one of those things that can lead to depression.
That exactly can become a toxic stress, because one thing can lead to anxiety, depression, and that can turn into toxic stress, because that affects your body, and you cannot get it out of your system sometimes. Right. But all in all, I think the most important thing when it comes to emotions and support is that you're not alone. There's groups that are here to support you, and it is important that you seek for professional help that can help you. I mean, professionals are experienced, and they help people, hundreds of people. They have the tools, they have the education, they have the resources to be able to walk through that pain and overcome that pain, or at least try to manage the pain.
Manage? When I think of the word manage, I guess I think more of how can I control it? When really when we grieve,
but it's an emotion.
We need to get that out of. Mourning would be the expression of grief. So we need to get that out of our bodies.
There's so many tools. There's so many different types of therapy, holistic therapies, for instance. I know that there is a therapy that when you are hugging a tree, or you're holding a tree and pushing the tree, or pushing a wall and screaming. Screaming helps you get things out of your system.
Oh.
What did you just touch on?
No,
where'd that land?
It reminded me of there was a time, and I think it was around the same time.
Are you a screamer?
No. It was the situation. It was around the time that
Katrina, what were you thinking? I don't know.
No.
My mind is
I'm glad there's no visual here.
No. Because when you said scream, at one point when I was going through it, and it had triggered a memory. That's what it was. Because I'm not very good about keeping my eureka moments quiet. there was a time where I was like, is there anywhere I can go and just yell to the top of my lungs to deal with what I'm going through, and nobody called the police? and I was thinking about that. I'm like, I don't think there's anywhere I can go and do that. And I was like, I'm like, wonder if that would be like a good thing to have in a place where you could just go and scream. Because you know how they have those places you can go, like a junkyard, and you can just destroy stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Smash rooms.
Yeah, smash rooms. I never been. I want to go.
I haven't went yet.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I remember, because I remember having that thought. I was like, yeah, I want to just go somewhere and scream. But I'm like, where could I go?
Well, when we're younger, when I was younger, one of the techniques was, I remember being taught, scream into your pillow.
Yeah. Oh.
Scream into your pillow. Nowadays, we have, going through treatment and stuff, it was we had like this huge stuffed animal and a bat, and you would hit the stuffed animal and scream at it and release everything.
As a matter of fact, that you said, a bat to my uncle, my mom's brother. He's a physician, and he would recommend to people to play sports where you have to hit something like baseball or something that you hit a ball, because the kickboxing, I mean, if you don't like somebody face on, then it's like that's a way to
combat sports
express and let all that anger, frustration out of your system. But exercise in general is
right, and that's where I was going to follow up on. Like, I'm a very physical person. I put on my headphones. I go to the gym. I'm a very leave me alone. Don't talk to me in the gym. And so when I'm grieving, that is a great tool to use. I don't need to talk to you. You don't need to talk to me. Let me go to the gym and let me get it out.
I would recommend classical music as well.
I love music too.
Music, writing, journaling,
dancing.
I
mean, it puts you in a good mood.
I can't do any of that.
You don't have to dance. You don't have to. No. I went to an elderly facility the other day to speak about mental health. Let me tell you, I get them out of their chair and I make them shake their bodies, and that is good with your circulation. And they loved it. They were so engaged that they asked me to come back. I was like, yeah, I'm like, it was a beautiful thing, because people need affection. They need attention, especially when they're older and they're in those homes that sometimes they don't have anybody else. And we're talking about connections, social interactions. And I'm sure that, getting to that age is a privilege, and they probably saw a lot of people, even friends, that they're not longer with them.
Right. And it's funny you said that about the older generation. I actually do. I go to the Kings Point sometime, and it's really nice. They have this whole theater where, and you know where that is. Yeah. So and I listen. That is what I think it's a retirement community, 55 and older. Every retirement community should be like that.
It's a dream.
Listen, I told my fiance, I said, listen, when we get old and great, we need to go live at a place like that. Because they'll have like dancing and concerts. Like they recently had the Barry Manilow tribute.
Really?
Yeah, and then there's this one couple that's always dancing. And it's just amazing. I'm like, yo, you get old and not 55. I don't even consider that really old, but you are dancing, and it's like you see everybody with their, they might have their walkers and their strollers, and they get up and they're moving. It's like good to see. I think something like that is great, and they actually have like lighting and everything. It's that's what it should be like, especially when you get older, and that's how you take care. And
they're happy, and they're so simple.
Right,
Katrina, do you want to share the experience that we had last Friday, was it, with the coloring books?
Oh, we met.
And I think that's a good way to express emotions, because the lady, helped me realize a lot of things that they were in my subconscious.
Yeah, so Leslie and I met with this wonderful woman last Friday, and to be very honest with you, I didn't know what I was walking into.
I didn't know either. I didn't know what to expect.
Right. I knew that she teaches art therapy. I knew that's her specialty. But when we walked in, we were there for a solid hour and a half. No, it was longer, hour and a half.
We didn't even feel it.
And she explained what the techniques were. We did a little meditation. We drank some tea.
And cookies.
And cookies.
Meditation's always good.
Don't tell anyone. And then we spent some time quietly.
And by the way, we have a project that is going to happen, and we're going to need your help.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Because we're going to do an online event with her, because it was amazing. Let me tell you, it was amazing. Like I said, she helped me get some things from a subconscious. And she told me, and then after she told me, I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. That's what it was.
Okay. I'm down for it.
Yeah, it was great. So we're gonna do a class. So everybody stay tuned, because it was a beautiful thing, right, Katrina?
It was. And, you know, Leslie, you thought you weren't artistic at all.
Let me
And
tell you, I'm not. I'm
beautiful.
very like, it wasn't beautiful. No, your art was like great. The colors were bright. I don't know what it was.
I think it's a matter of perception. Have you guys ever did painting with a twist?
Painting with the twist. I've heard
We can do painting with a twist and tea, because
with, painting with tea, not
Oh, that's what that is. Yes.
No. I mean, the alcohol you maybe shouldn't do, but no, it was definitely an experience. I did that with my family one time. It was really nice.
Yeah, we can do those activities. I mean, they're gonna be joining us, I believe, on October 19 at the Pompano event.
We're getting closer.
Yeah, we're getting closer. So everybody, stay tuned, and please come join us.
And you reach out to us to purchase those tickets
At our website, www.
for a Better Day Foundation.
I'll say link in the description. I'm gonna put it.
Yeah, there you go.
Or you can always give me a call at 954-297-9802. I'll be happy to answer you guys. It was just amazing.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
That's dope.
So this was a wonderful conversation. I appreciate you both. And
I appreciate being here, and appreciate you guys and everybody that is paying attention to our talks. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Anthony, for coming on this side.
All right. I'll be here, but maybe not on this side as often. But I'll come in from time to time.
Oh my!
I'm shy.
That is great. I'm shy too.
Same here. No, I don't think any of us are really extroverts.
I don't think so either, but we're doing it for the cause.
Exactly.
It's worthwhile cause. All right, y'all. Have a good one.
Thank you.